But we did have 2 successes in this first cohort. So it's not all lost. It's not like we were only wrong. So kind of in that, I said, 3 out of 10 here. So we had 7. So we had 2 out of 7. Burn Manufacturing. It was an idea stage company. I usually describe it as 4 hippies. 4 hippies show up at a coffee shop in Seattle. They have a 70-page business plan that says, we think it's cheaper and better to build cook stoves in Africa than to build them in China and import them into Africa. And here's 70 pages that document the entire process and how much it'll cost down to every little last detail. And we just need $4 million to make it happen. And I bet on that one. I said, yeah, I think your plan looks sound. Let me go help you. It took 18 months, but they did find $4 million. They were wrong. It took $9 million, but they raised $9 million. So that's okay. And they're now the largest cook stove manufacturer in Africa. They just announced last month they built the 1 millionth stove. Only problem I had was I didn't get any equity in this company because of some really weird circumstances. So it's a success. I picked the right company. They did pay me for my help, but I don't own any equity in the company. So bad on me. Sorry, Shaw. Sorry, Shaw. I missed that one. But
they were the ones that got the, was it an OPIC grant or something?
Yeah, it was $3 million from the US government and $1 million from GE. It was just, and that was a terrible investment by them because they put the wrong terms on it and they unwound that. And there's a lot of hair on this deal, but it's a business. It's succeeding. It's making a profit and it's doing good.
Yes, and that's a very important point. Deal structure is a really tough nut and can make the difference between a successful company and a successful investor.
We talked about that last week. We'll talk about that a lot more in the paid program. But if you were to sit down with my investors, and there were 3 of them, you're talking to one of them now, and if we were to literally sit down, which we didn't do, back in July of 2012 when these companies were picked, and we said, all right, right now, which one's going to succeed and which one's going to fail? Burn would have been at the bottom. Like nobody would have said these guys were going to succeed. They were literally 4 hippies. Like if they, I don't know if they were wearing shoes or not. I presume they were, but if they weren't, I wouldn't have been surprised.
And there were like 3 cook stove companies in Seattle.
Oh, nobody had ever succeeded with a cook stove, a for-profit cook stove company ever that we knew of at the time. I'll tell you about another one in a bit that we found out later. But as far as we know, no one had ever done this before. It just seemed crazy, but it needed to get done. And so I picked it. I put them on the list. The other one on here probably would have been second from the bottom or third from the bottom. It was My Turn. They were actually, we pivoted and did a different business inside of Fledge in like week 3, because what they were doing at the beginning was tool lending libraries. They had a piece of software to do tool lending libraries, which is a nice thing to have, but it doesn't make any money. And what they pivoted to was a piece of software that helps track where things are. And post-Fledge, they got a call from, first was Kaiser Permanente, the big healthcare company, and then Norwegian Cruise Lines, and then another Fortune 500, they just, you talk about rocket ships. They had no sales guy, and yet they had 8 or 9 big giant companies that were their customers, all of which called them. No outgoing calls whatsoever in this company. So they just had the right product at the right time for the right customers, and then they didn't really charge them enough.
I never heard about that. The last I heard, they were managing tool lending for hardware or tool rental for hardware companies.
Well, they still do that on the side because they can. So they still have like 400 customers that are tool lending libraries, but the meat of the business is actually Fortune 500s. So I sent VC after VC over to My Turn because it seemed like this thing was working. And every time I sent, the founder kept going like, I don't really want to, definitely don't want to work with him. I don't want to work with her. I kept finding the friendliest VCs I could find that did tech for good companies. It's like, I just don't want to be on that path. I'm good. We said, okay, like we don't force you to go down that path, because we do a revenue-based investing scheme, which we'll describe in the paid program. You can see it online as well. We've talked about this before. They pay us a percentage of revenues. So we made 4.4 times our money back from this company that never took another dime from anybody. It's still up and running. It's totally happy. It pays all its employees, has happy customers. At one point, I got him a sales guy. Didn't help. Didn't make the phone ring any faster. Because they're bootstrapping. All right, they just can't afford that many more customers. You get, again, you have the trouble. You get twice as many customers. You need to hire more people, but you can't afford it until they're paid you. And what? Anyway, it's a big success, right? In terms of investment. In terms of scale, I wish it were bigger, but I'm happy. I'm happy it's still up and running and working. So let's go on to session 2. I won't talk about all of them because we just can't make it through all these. Session 2 was 6 months later, not quite 6 months later, beginning of 13. We got more applicants from more places. Tansa Clean was a founder here in Seattle, but doing business in India. Codeza was our first real international company. It was Canada, Vancouver, 3 hours from here. Great group. We did headshots that year, so we got nice pictures of everybody. Lots of women entrepreneurs. We always love to have diversity here. And 4 of them never shipped a product. 4 out of 8. Right? Years later, if you talk to the founder of Uber Local, he'll tell you he's still working on it. He still uses, I think he changed the name, but he's still working on it, but never actually shipped anything that a customer, well, he shipped some prototypes customers purchased, but never made any revenues of any significance.
That's one of the ones I busted for no longer being legally incorporated.
Yes. After a while, if you don't do your paperwork, the state will just terminate your company, but it doesn't really matter if you're not doing any business, you don't really need a company anyway. You can always turn them back on. All right, so of that crowd, we have one that's a nice success. And so the rest of them are in the middle, but Shift Labs, they went and raised $1 million and change. That was their seed round. Their Series A was last year. I think it closed in 2020, might have been end of 2019. They're a healthcare company. They sell a little gadget that clips onto an IV bag and tells you how fast the medicine is infusing, because that's useful in a pandemic. They had a really, really good March and April last year, bigger than like all the years past. And they're still paying us back, right? It takes a long time to get paid back from companies as they grow. But we're about 3 times paid back already. And on paper, we have another 5.8x on paper, not realized yet. And the reason why it's split into 2 parts is that's our structure. We do half of it redeemable with revenues, and we do half that waits around for something good to happen.